Elizabeth Evans, and I'm a homeschooling mom of 4 young kids. I'm figuring this out as I go, but I'm here to talk to Bonnie, who has been writing and speaking on the subject for over a decade and has been homeschooling for 3 decades.
My name's Bonnie Landry. I've got 7 kids. They're ages 13 to 33. I've been homeschooling for 29 years. I'm a wife, a mom, a grandma. I'm a speaker and a writer, and I'm an advocate of joy. So we're here to provide this podcast so that homeschooling can look like you imagined it to be. Okay, welcome. Good morning. Good morning, Elizabeth. I'd like to introduce our listeners to Matthew and Esther Cowper. Matthew and Esther have recently started a business that is catering to both homeschoolers and school, brick and mortar schools. And the nature of the business, I think, is really important for us to be looking at, because I think it's an area really lacking, particularly in homeschool families, because most of us probably don't feel super confident in this particular area. So the business is a current events curriculum that is available online. And so we're going to be talking about it more, what that's all about, how it works with Matthew and Esther. But the idea is to equip Christian students with the knowledge and understanding of what's going on in their world so that they can engage the culture more effectively, right? I think this is a really strong basis on which to start something like this, right? And I use the word business, but I think business, business is not the best word for it. I think maybe we could use, sorry, I'm losing my, sorry?
Ministry?
Ministry, yeah. Ministry is probably a better word for what you're doing, right? So I think that I'd like to introduce Matthew and Esther to you guys firstly, but I'm going to share, first of all, a personal story and how I know Matthew and Esther. So Elizabeth, you don't know this story yet. So Esther grew up in our community of homeschoolers. And we didn't know them because they lived about, probably 45 minutes away from us. But I had heard that there was a family who had a couple of kids nearby us that were homeschooling, and we had not yet met them. Now, I tend to be, sort of evangelical in my approach and want to meet people, bring people into our community. And anyways, but it happened to be around the time that my daughter was about 13. She was, for whatever reason, there wasn't very many girls kind of in her age range. And we felt it was really important for our kids in their teens to be, to be fostering friendships for people they could go off to college with or go do, sort of adult things with. And so anyways, we really prayed about that. And it was during this time of prayer that I had heard about Esther's family living not too far from us. So I thought, I'm just going to phone them, right? And so I phoned Esther's mom and I said, hi, my name's Bonnie Landry. You don't know me, but I heard you're homeschooling and I heard you have some, teens homeschooling. Do they need friends? And Esther's mom said, yes, they really need friends. And I said, well, why don't we get together? And so we got together and fostered some really beautiful friendships amongst our kids. And my daughter Mary and Esther are now raising children together. And, where they live in the same community, and they have this beautiful friendship now that's now, you guys are what, 25, 26, 27-ish. And so your friendship is now been longer than you guys have been alive. So that's cool. Anyways, and of course we met Matthew as a result of our friendship with Esther, because she decided to marry him. And so Matthew and Esther now live in our community, and that's been a real beautiful addition for us in our community. So a little bit about yourselves, if you guys would like to sort of introduce yourselves as now the adults living in the community raising a family here.
Sure. So I'm a lawyer by training. I didn't have a homeschooling or even a Christian school upbringing. I went to public school all the way through, and then a public university, and so these I think I knew as a Christian in public school that I was sort of missing a Christian perspective on things, but I never really got that. So, but I've been interested in these issues, and as I've always been a bit of a news junkie. So so that's part of what fits into what we're doing. Yeah, and then Esther and I have, Esther can probably tell you a little bit more about her background. You've already you've already mentioned that she was homeschooled, but Esther can tell you a little bit more.
And when I met your family, that was, it really changed my world, opened up that whole community for me and my family, and it was a great blessing. And yes, I was homeschooled grades 6 to 12. So I went to public school before that, and then 2 years of private school for grades 4 and 5. And then my mom decided to homeschool us. And then I went off to university and became a teacher. I taught grade 5 for a little bit, and then we had a baby. And now we have 2 babies, and they're both under 2, and they're not quite ready for homeschooling, but we're working on it.
That's great. Yeah, her kids are beautiful. So do you want to start with questions, Elizabeth?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Current events is often an overlooked area of study. Why is this important for students?
So I think the main thing that we're, I mean, the main thing is, of course, just to be prepared for the ideas and events that our world contains, and to be able to, for Christian students, to be able to understand their faith in light of, understand these events in light of their faith, so that they have a coherent understanding of the world. You know, as Christians, we're called to be in the world but not of the world, and but without an understanding of what's going on and the ideas and the big issues, we can't really be effectively in the world, and we can't really witness to the world. So so that's a big part of it. And I think that allows students to be able to critically engage with their peers, critically engage with ideas that they come in contact with. Apart from that, just as a pedagogical question, I think that current events really is the meeting point for a lot of really important areas of study. So history and geography are obviously 2 major areas of study which tend to meet in current events. But there's also civics, political science, other kinds of social studies. We try to integrate theology where it's appropriate. Certainly things like apologetics also can come into play.
Can I interject for a moment, Matthew?
Yeah, by all means.
I'm a big fan, as those who listen to this podcast will know, is of sort of family studies and choosing family study as our where we can, right? And that's really the heart of I think a beautiful homeschool experience. And I think that current events is definitely one of the areas where we can really grab onto that and make that family study. But I think where your program really shines is that parents often are uncomfortable or feel not knowledgeable about dealing with current events, right? And I think it gives us training. Do you know what I mean? So even if it was something you just did for a period of time, it helps to sort of train you in how to think, what questions to ask, how you can broach this topic in a more natural way, right? So I think that I think that's a real strong point for you guys, right? In kind of teaching parents, if you choose this as a family study topic or platform, that's where it's going to really shine, is in sort of training yourself, right? I think that's one of your real strong points.
Yes, I think, and a lot of parents, they just don't have the time to be looking into these big issues and week to week or month to month or whatever, right? homeschooling is a busy time, and it's overwhelming to just look at big news sites and then decide what they might share with their children, right? So we sort of condense it for you and make it clear. You know,
and
it's a good resource just for parents to read as well.
Exactly, yeah. And we often have big families, so when we end up with the high schoolers on one end, you know, we're busy with all the little kids, and we're thinking, okay, I'm not providing these high schoolers with enough, right? Or middle schoolers with enough. So this is a really great addition for that. How do you guys decide what to choose for current events? Like what, I mean, we're daily being, kind of bombarded in a sense with what's going on in the world. What's the deciding factor?
Well, we try to balance out the lesson plans that we provide. So we try to not have it too much sort of North America focused. So we balance, but of course, a lot of American issues are really important, and they're in the news. And I think most of our clients are and will be Canadian or American. So these American issues are certainly something that we look at, and Canadian issues, of course, when they come up. I'm sure, as Canadians, we're not going to overlook those. But we do try to keep an international focus. I think the international issues are sometimes some of the ones which actually do intersect with a lot of those other areas of study, even more so than what are for us domestic issues. So we want to cover, the issues which are really in the news and sort of unavoidable issues that students are going to hear about, regardless of whether it's something that comes up in their course of study. But if they're going to hear about it anyway, I think it's important that they get a Christian approach to it and sort of a more in-depth understanding of the topic.
Right. I've noticed you just done one on coronavirus.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
so
which is great, because we often don't know, okay, how do we engage this particular topic? So I think that's great.
Right. And this coming week, we're actually doing one on the U.S. election. That is, a major American subject, which is also unavoidable for pretty much anyone in the first world, right?
Yeah, and it is of interest internationally, for sure.
Yeah.
I know it's important, but I'm so ready for it to be over.
No doubt. We don't have long.
Yeah. 2 weeks left, and then we can.
Yeah, exactly.
Fingers crossed. Ignore it for a while. Wait another 4 years.
Quite a few events in the news. We could say, wish it was just over now.
Yes, no kidding, coronavirus. Elizabeth, you got another question?
No, well,
I do.
Before we move on, I think, so I talked about, we do want to hit those sort of big issues which are really at the forefront of the news, but there's other issues that we want to touch on as well. Well, ones which are of particular importance to Christians, so issues obvious sometimes of religious freedom, issues within the church, and then also one thing that we really try to look at, and that we looked at actually just this past week, is issues of Christian persecution around the world. And I think
that's an important one too.
Yeah, as Christians in the West, we often are fairly blind to what's happening with our brothers and sisters, in some other areas of the world, and by looking at, our study last week was on Nigeria, and in Nigeria, Nigeria is very divided between Christians and Muslims, and there's a lot of Christian farming communities that have been attacked by a tribe that is a herding tribe, and so there's like economic reasons, they're fighting over land, but there's also religious reasons. So the herding tribe is overwhelmingly Muslim, and when they've attacked Christian towns, they've targeted and burned down churches. They've targeted Christian. They've targeted churches during worship services,
days, like Christmas especially.
And
we don't hear about this in the mainstream news for sure, right?
Yeah, exactly. So and it's not a trivial thing. There's most estimates are that there have been over 1,000 Christians killed in this conflict this year alone, and it's been over 1,000 for many years. So anyway, so that's sort of an example of sort of something that we do want to highlight, because not only because it's important, but I think it's also important for Christian youth to
have that connection.
Yeah, to have that connection to their brothers and sisters around the world.
Right.
And
it can affect their future plans, in terms of, it would open up doors to, avocations and things like that, that we, what can I do, to help resolve these issues of persecution, right?
Yeah, I mean, God willing, it does inspire them. In whatever direction it happens to be, whether as missionaries or in terms of getting involved politically to try and do address these issues. But just also giving people a sense of what the church around the world goes through. It's in our own local churches or parishes, our concerns are so much smaller, and the things that we complain and worry about are so much smaller.
Parish council meeting fights and things like that. Elizabeth, you had another question?
I'm just wondering, maybe you've already said this, what age group is this geared toward? And if this is for like older kids, do you have plans of maybe creating a curriculum for smaller, like elementary school age kids? I know the other night we were watching the debate and my 9-year-old had a ton of questions, and I don't think I have enough knowledge to be able to really answer it in the best way.
Yeah, it's mainly geared towards high school students. Now, some younger kids might be able to follow some of the lesson plans, but in the future, we would like to expand and have curriculum lesson plans available for younger students. Of course, with the current plans, as we've talked about, you could read them as a teacher, mom, dad, and explain them to your kids, because they are fairly short, straightforward.
Okay.
I'll tell you something. I think this is a good segue into sort of getting down to the nitty-gritty of how it's structured, because what I think is really brilliant about it is that there's vocabulary, there's background, there's maps to show you where you're talking about. So tell us about the structure of the lessons, because I think this is where the education for the parent is really fantastic, but also where you could draw in younger. I think you could go very young, because you've got the tools. You're provided with the tools to how to talk about this, what these things mean. So if you want to sort of address how the lessons are actually structured, that would be great.
Yeah, so each week we have a lesson plan, a backgrounder, and a teacher's guide. So in the lesson plan, it's a page or two of the actual current event that we're talking about, and the student reads that, or the parent can read that, or both. And after we describe the issue, it's kind of like a news article. So you read it as a piece of news you see on, and then after the news article, we have critical thinking questions, and that go over what they've read and ways to take it further. And then we have activities that dip into like history. They might make a timeline they might have that option. And a lot of these they're all optional, of course, and some of them are more difficult and some are more straightforward or for younger students. And they go into language art. There will be a language arts question or an art question sometimes, so it changes week to week, but there are different things that are different subject areas covered.
Yeah. And in the sidebar, there's like a vocabulary, right?
Yes.
With definitions. And then you have links to articles that would be more towards older students, right? If they wanted to read more deeply into this particular topic, right?
Correct. And we don't I guess, dumb down the language. We like to keep it fairly, well, we keep in difficult vocabulary within reason, we hope. But we do, yes, we try to define those terms.
Yeah, no, I think that's good because it gives you a better range of what you're able to do. Like my impression of it, except for, maybe math and other sort of basics, that it could be its own curriculum. If you really worked on all the, did the language arts and did the history and the geography and all of that with the kids, and science as well. There's many areas of crossover with where you could pull in science ideas, that it could be its own curriculum, right?
Yeah, so that's the lesson plan, but then you also get a weekly backgrounder, sometimes two. It depends on what the issue is, but the backgrounder delves into something that the current event talks about, but in much more detail, right? So it might be, so he did one on abortion, and then, so the current event would be something that's just happened in the news regarding that. And then the backgrounder will actually talk about what it is, like maybe the history of abortion in the States and what that is for students, so they understand the issue more comprehensively.
Yeah, and that can sort of be something that's really goes into the issue, the lesson that the lesson plan is about in greater detail, or it can be something that really informs the lesson plan. So we did a lesson plan on the war that's currently going on between Armenia and Azerbaijan in the Caucasus Mountains, and the backgrounder was on the Armenian genocide, which is sort of informs a little bit of the context for that particular conflict.
Right. Yeah.
And I think both that's perhaps an example of a subject that we wanted to get into because we think it's important, but also a subject which allows parents to get to this background information, this background event, the Armenian genocide, which is often overlooked, and it was quite tragic and something which obviously is continuing to inform our world, because it's part of why Armenians are so concerned and why they're involved in this conflict.
Right.
Yeah, like linking these current events to broader historical issues, I think that's a strong part of our program, because I know when I was a high school student, if you don't have context, you just forget about things, or it's kind of meaningless to you because it's one event isolated.
Yeah, and again, training the mind, training the parent, training the child, whoever's actually doing the program, to recognize that no event is a single event, right? There's always context, right? And so, that's mind expanding in and of itself, right? So,
and then sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that we also include a teacher's guide, which is just a very a little bit of a introduction to the issue, and then for the teacher, an idea about how to approach some of these, some of the critical thinking questions that we bring up, and ideas for how to help students get into the activities that we've given as options for the lesson.
Right. Okay. So 3 components then: the backgrounder, the teacher's guide, and what's the third component?
The lesson plan itself.
The lesson plan. Okay. So so very clear right, about how each lesson is kind of rolls out, right?
And I saw you have
Elizabeth, you have a question?
samples on your website, so I was able to take a look at your sample for coronavirus, and it reads really, I guess, simple and straightforward, which I really like as a homeschooling mom. It seems like something that I would feel confident following, to teach my kids.
Yeah, and I mean, a textbook has a more linear approach to these things, where this is, be able to put things side by side in a sense, like even actually print them out and put them side by side so that you're reading things, horizontally rather than sort of in this linear way that often leaves kids, like it doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
So question, is there a search, cost. I want to address cost first, because I know people will be wondering, okay, what does this cost? I believe this could be an entire curriculum, that you could build, except for, adding in math and building on the science part of it. But I think the price that you guys are asking is really reasonable for what you could build out of this, and that it could be a family thing. So let's talk about the cost for a moment for a homeschool family.
Yeah, for a homeschool family, we're charging $10 a month US.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And that comes with the three things every week.
Every week. Okay. And I noticed that you guys also have a free month or something right now, so people can actually try.
So if people are signing up right now, we've got the first month free, and there's just a coupon code that is right there on the website when you sign up. So you can just plug it in and get the first month free, and there's no obligation if it doesn't end up working out for a particular family, or it doesn't fit into what a family is looking for or doing, or it doesn't work with particular children, then there's no obligation.
So if you want to try it out, if you want to see what it's like, there's sample lesson plans, and then there's a free month, and it's just month to month. You don't have to sign up for any particular period of time.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So what would this look like for students who were wanting to do this on their own, a busy parent that felt like current events was just something that they couldn't tackle at this time? What would it look like for a student doing it on their own?
Well, a student can have access to the lesson plan and even the teacher's guide and the backgrounder, and read those themselves. And it's fairly, like an older student, could use the teacher's guide. It's fairly straightforward. And then I would go to the current event, the lesson plan itself, and the student can go through that and answer questions. And I suppose if you don't have others to dialogue with, you can answer in short answer, like written short answer, or whatever the parent would like for that.
Okay, great. And this is a great place where we can pull in the Facebook group, right? People can post questions there. They can, share ideas there, possibly the students or the parents. Really, that we could pull the Facebook group into that.
Absolutely. It hasn't gotten. There aren't a lot of people on there right now. We're just posting sort of discussions about posts about our various lesson plans. But that's absolutely where we hope discussion will arise, and where parents will be able to give ideas about how they've been able to tackle it, or maybe directions that they've been able to take the lesson plan beyond what we've provided. One of the great things about current events, which I think we've already mentioned, is that it does plug into all sorts of other areas of study. So you can often take one of these things and go in a direction of looking at, we did the coronavirus, go in the direction of looking at how our immune system works, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, pulling the science for sure.
I just have to say that I think it's something I'd be interested in purchasing just for myself. I think I missed out on a lot of important current events education in the schooling that I went through. And I think I'm interested in knowing more about all these current events now, and it'd probably help me in teaching my kids as they grow up too,
and raising your awareness. Yeah.
Right.
It can absolutely be used that way. You know, it's funny, these current events come up, you know, at a soccer game among parents, or things their kids have heard in school, and it's your kids are going to hear a lot of this stuff from their friends at the rec center or wherever you are, right? So it's that's another reason why it's really important to know what's going on and be able to have a response or critically think about it yourself with your family.
And important to learn how to discern, you know, what's actually going on in the secular media, discerning what's, you know, truth from opinion, right? Because much of our news now is expressed as fact, when in reality what they're sharing is an opinion, right? But it's not stated that way. So we have to teach ourselves and our children to be able to discern, you know, fact from opinion, right? I think that's really important.
And this is why, that's one of the reasons why we do try to provide a summary that we've written ourselves, because we're trying to hopefully pull out some of the opinion that does tend to get into the mainstream reporting, and provide something that's a little bit more objective or unslanted. You know, certainly we're writing from a Christian perspective. Our what we are writing reflects that. But I hope that we're able to avoid at least some of the pitfalls that you do see in the media. So yeah, thanks.
And some commentary on just sort of differing opinions, I think would be valuable to address, like how in the areas where we can have different opinions. If you want to speak to that for a moment.
Yeah, so you know, we cover issues which, you know, aren't particularly politically fiery, if you will, but then we do cover issues which are going to be politically controversial, and we certainly recognize that you know, parents are the primary educators. Some parents are going to have strong opinions about how they want to approach issues. But what we try to do is we try to distinguish between issues which the Christian tradition is very clear on, things like
The sanctity of life.
The sanctity of life, some family issues, you know, some of the you know, transgenderism is an issue that is certainly coming up and being used to assault charged. Christian teaching and Christian witness. But then there's lots of issues which are politically important. You know, there's a lot of discussion about healthcare and immigration in the current American election, where Christians can have different opinions, and we should what we try to do is we try to provide the Christian principles that should inform how we think about these issues and evaluate them. But we recognize that Christians can reasonably differ, and try to provide both sides, try to provide an understanding of a non-partisan approach to those kinds of issues.
Right.
Yeah. So with current events constantly changing, will you offer a library so people can go back and see past links and posts of, you know, a year ago or you know, whatever it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have an archive of all the events that all the lesson plans and backgrounders that we've done. And obviously that's, you know, it's relatively small. We just launched in September right now, but as it grows, that library of resources is going to grow as well. So we really hope that, you know, if a family finds that one particular lesson plan is important for them, or that their children get engaged with it, they could go back to find, you know, similar lesson plans or related backgrounders perhaps, that will help them go deeper.
Yeah, and the backgrounders might be especially helpful here, like looking up, if you're studying genocides or something, the Armenian genocide is on there, and you'll have a whole backgrounder on that issue that isn't just connected to that current event, right?
Yeah, it's actually, genocide has been something which has come up a couple times, because we did a lesson on the Uyghurs in China who are being persecuted by the Chinese government,
Right.
and then there's in the lesson plan that we did on the persecution of Nigerian Christians, there's a question of whether that constitutes genocide. You know, it was clearly
Right.
very you know, it's a horrible circumstance and a horrible event. Whether it's genocide under the, you know, the standard definition is an open question, but it's something that's worth discussing if you're handling these issues or discussing these issues.
Yeah, so you can take that term and search it up. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask, because I foresee myself using this that way as a supplementary addition to things we're doing, because we're sort of a very literature-based family, so all our history, geography, and whatnot comes out of what we're reading. And I could see having this alongside that. Okay, say we're studying France, a novel set in France. Okay, if I want to know sort of the current political milieu in France, or if there's anything sort of present day that I would need to know about that, you know, is there a search function? I can put France and see what comes up on your site, because I could see myself using it in that way, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
great. That's great to know, because I think that you know, even if you chose to use it as a primary source, that you would also, a primary subject area, that you could also bring it into your everyday conversation. Something comes up in the news. Oh, okay, well, let's look that up and see if they've got something in their database on that.
Okay. So then just one more time, that $10 a month gets you all the current, like the new stuff, but also the archived stuff.
that's right,
correct.
Elizabeth. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. That's very cool.
It is. It's a fantastic price point. So I'm glad you guys have settled on that. So last question, and then we can wrap things up. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing Christian young people today? What's the biggest challenge, and how can your program sort of help to combat those challenges?
So one of the main reasons why we wanted to do this was we were concerned about Christian students being able to sort of maintain their faith into adulthood. I think for a lot of, for probably almost all Christian parents, that's sort of the overarching concern of how they raise their children and the education that they want to give their children. So, and I remember reading about you know, the numbers of children who are raised in the Christian faith, but then leave the faith in adulthood, in college, and we think that this curriculum really can prepare students to be able to engage in the world, engage with political ideas in a way which where their Christian faith is integrated, and so that they're less vulnerable to being sort of seduced by an ideology which is really a political ideology that can sort of
becomes a rival religion.
that becomes a rival religion, and we're really living in, I think, an era in at least North America where politics serves as a religion for a lot of people, and sort of acts and some of these political ideologies act as sort of rival religions,
Right.
And yeah.
Kids need tools, right? We need tools, but our you know, most of us feel poorly equipped to send our kids out into the world and tackle those really big questions.
Yeah, and just the culture in general is one which has a lot of challenges for Christians, because culture is quite hostile to some things which we believe in, which we think is important, and to be well formed in those on those issues, you know, whether it's issues of you know, traditional Christian morality and how that impacts us in the world, or whether it's issues like the sanctity of life, where Christian perspectives are often very meet with a lot of hostility in the culture.
Yeah.
And so being well formed on these kinds of things, I think, is important to be able to engage in the world without losing your faith, and being able to engage with people who differ from you while remaining strong in the faith,
and charitable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Bringing your heart and your mind into these issues.
Yeah.
With others.
And by I think one of the things that studying these current events can help do is give an idea of where other people are coming from, and that does help charity, even as you're sort of learning more about what your opinions and what the faith teaches on these issues.
Perspective, yeah. Yes. Well, I think we're going to have to wrap up because we're out of time. This has been fantastic. So thank you so much, both of you, for coming, and we wish you well. And people can, again, have their questions answered via your Facebook page or your email, which is on your website, Veritas Current Events. And I hope that this explodes, because I think this is great for all of us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bonnie.
And thank you so much, Elizabeth.